Alden didn't waste a heartbeat. He stepped forward, slicing the first girl free, catching her as she fell into his arms with a weak gasp. Her eyes fluttered open, wide with terror, and she clutched at his vest as if anchoring herself to the living world. "Please. They mark us for the night crossing," she whispered, her voice trembling like a candle flame, fighting the wind. Alden had no idea what that meant, but he didn't intend to find out. He lowered her to the ground as gently as he could before cutting the second girl loose. "Say, Every second felt carved from a blade. The figures on the ridge had begun to descend. Not walking, not running. Drifting down the slope, like smoke sliding along the earth. Alden's mind screamed at him to run, to leave the land, the girls, everything behind. But something older and deeper inside him held him rooted. Maybe it was guilt from the choices that had led him here. Maybe it was stubbornness. Maybe was the faint, almost childlike trust in the girl's eyes as she looked at him, silently begging him not to leave them to whatever those masked beings were. He cut down the third girl, then the fourth, wincing as his muscles burned with urgency, sweat stinging his eyes. The humming began again, this time louder, fuller, echoing through the ravine walls until the very air seemed to vibrate. The girls flinched at the sound, curling into themselves, covering their ears. "They're calling the Hollow Ones," the youngest cried. "Hollow Ones, Alden." Alden didn't know the name, but the dread blooming in his chest told him enough. Singers. "You enough, nothing good," answered. "That kind of call." He grabbed the arm of the girl nearest to him. "We need to move. Now," he growled, forcing strength into his voice, despite the tremor in his gut. The girls nodded. Their legs shook beneath them. They were weak, starved, dehydrated, terrified, and Alden knew they wouldn't make it far unless he bought them time. He led them toward a narrow path that wound toward a line of thick junipers. If they could reach the grove, they might hide long enough to regroup. Bramble was still thrashing in the distance, his frantic cries echoing across the land. Alden prayed the horse wouldn't bolt entirely. Behind him, the masked figures reached the ravine floor. Up close they moved with puppet-like stiffness, as though controlled by unseen strings. Each wore a necklace of small, hollowed reeds that rattled as they walked, producing a sound that grated against Alden's nerves. One figure lifted its mask, revealing not a face, but a darkness deeper than shadow, a void that seemed to inhale the light around it. The girls gasped, one falling to her knees, whispering a prayer Alden didn't recognize. He pulled her up, half carrying her as they stumbled toward the grove. The ground beneath them thrummed, as if something enormous was burrowing beneath the surface, following their movement. Alden stole a glance back and froze. The masked beings weren't alone anymore. Emerging from cracks in the ravine floor were tall, wiry creatures with long and heads stretched like clay. Their skin was pale as bone, and their mouths opened not sideways but vertically, splitting their faces in a grotesque, silent scream. They crawled out like spiders before twisting upright, sniffing the air with twitching, skeletal fingers raised. One turned toward Alden and the girls, its mouth splitting wider, a horrific grin opening from chest to chin. Alden's blood chilled. "Ron!" The shout tore from him, raw and primal. He shoved the girls forward just as the creatures lunged, their movements jerky yet impossibly fast. Alden fired 3 shots behind him, without aiming. One bullet ricocheted off a rock. Another pinged off a creature's elongated arm, The third lodged in one of their chests. The creature staggered but did not fall. It simply cocked its head, with an eerie curiosity. Then continued its pursuit, as though bullets were insects brushing against its skin. The grove loomed ahead like salvation. Alden reached the first line of trees and spun around, dragging a fallen branch across ground to kick up dust. Anything to slow pursuit. The humming grew sharper, angrier. The masked figures began tracing symbols in the air, their fingers glowing a faint, sickly blue. The creatures, the hollow ones, responded, sprinting faster, their limbs bending impossibly as they crawled up the ravine wall. Alden felt the earthquake under their approach. The moment he and the girls crossed into the grove, the wind shifted, abruptly, violently. The trees groaned as if struck by an unseen force. The humming stopped again. Silence cracked through the world like lightning. The masked figures halted at the ravine edge. The hollow ones froze mid-step. None of them entered the grove. Alden panted, bracing himself against a tree, as the girls collapsed around him. Trembling, one whispered, "The grove, it's sacred. They can't cross. Not while the spirits protect it." Alden didn't know anything about spirits, sacred lands, or creatures born from nightmares. But he did know that the grove had just saved their lives. He holstered his gun, breathing hard. "All right," he said, voice hoarse but steady. "You're safe for now. But someone better tell me, what in hell is happening on my land?" The oldest girl looked up with hollow, haunted eyes. "You bought more than land," she murmured. "You bought a doorway. One they've been waiting to open. And somewhere beyond the grove," the masked figures lifted their bone rattles, shaking them in slow unison. A warning. A promise. A declaration that this wasn't over.